Most men believe that if they provide security and unconditional support, burning desire will just naturally follow. But the harsh reality is that the traits that make you a good husband are often the exact opposite of the traits that trigger her attraction. So, in this video, I'm going to break down the evolutionary bait and switch between good genes and good dad so you stop being the safety net for a woman who gave her best years to someone else. If you're new here, I'm Keith. Over the last 7 years alone, I've helped hundreds of men find and keep fulfilling relationships without sacrificing their purpose or their work. And on top of that, I've published more than 80 essays helping men like you not only get ahead in relationships, but also become better men in the process. Let's start with the fundamental conflict. Imagine you are building a house. You need an architect to design something beautiful and structurally imposing. But you also need a contractor to actually pay for the bricks and maintain the plumbing. Rarely, if ever, is the architect maintaining the plumbing or the contractor designing the structure, right? And evolution basically put women in a very similar bind. So, to win the game of evolution, a woman needs two things that rarely exist in the same man. Firstly, she needs good genes. So, this is the raw biological material, the risk taking, the physical symmetry, the aggression, and the high testosterone. In our ancestral past, this was the Viking, right? He's basically the guy who ensures her offspring is strong enough to survive a harsh environment. But that guy is usually terrible at sticking around long term. So he's basically high risk. But second to good genes is the good dad, which she also needs. And this is like the hand of stability, the provisioning, the safety, the oxytocin fueled security. And the good dad is kind of like the accountant because he ensures her offspring doesn't starve, basically. And here's the kicker, right? Men have just one reproductive method, and that's to scatter as much genetic material as possible. We are very simple. But women, on the other hand, they're just like filters. And because of that, they have to manage the paradox with time. So think of it like this: in her 20s, during her peak fertility window, her biology is screaming for a Viking because she craves the genetic jackpot. But as that window closes or after the children are born, the biological alarm bells switch, and now the Viking is more of a liability and she needs more of an accountant to take over her life. And the problem is that most men try to sell themselves as the accountant, hoping it will generate the desire reserved just for the Viking. But it doesn't really work that way, you see. If this dynamic is so obvious biologically, why don't we talk about it openly? It's because society has actually built a massive structure to hide it. And this is the second layer that you need to understand. Social conventions are just tools to help women bridge this gap between the Viking and the accountant. And think about the narratives we see in movies or hear from our friends. When a man acts on his biological instinct, like trying to sleep with many women and giving in to his strongest urges, he is labeled a player or a dog. And obviously, he is seen as the villain. But when that man sacrifices his own resources, time, and energy to raise children he didn't even father, he is like called a hero. And he is then a real man for stepping up. Why is that, right? Well, it's because society creates psychological arrangements to ease women's reproductive schedule. So if we admitted that the nice guy, for example, was just being used for his paycheck, while the bad boy got the real fire, the system would just collapse and the nice guys would quit. So that's why we invent social rules and we create the concept of the right thing to do. This ensures that when a woman is done with her good genes phase, this is the college phase, the party phase, the having fun stage, right? There is a safety net of good dad candidates waiting to catch her, who are shamed into compliance by social pressures. Now, let's look at how this plays out in the real world. This brings us to the diary of mating, so to speak. to get the best of both worlds, the Vikings' genetics and the accountant's wallet. Women utilize what we call a cheating protocol, and I don't mean sneaking out of a hotel room at midnight or anything like that, but there are really two types. There is reactive cheating and there is proactive cheating. Reactive is what you usually think of. So a woman marries the safe, stable, good dad doctor. So she has the big house and security, but her biology is bored because she's missing that high testosterone genetic input. So she has an affair with the hot waiter or the model she met on holiday. And like this, she's reactively secure in good genes while keeping her good dad provider on the hook. But the more common and perhaps more devastating version of today is what I'll call proactive cheating, and this is the so called single mother dilemma. This is where a woman secures the good genes first and has the kids with a genetically superior man in her early 20s. This is the guy who was never going to settle down, by the way. Once she has secured that genetic material, she separates from him or he decides to leave her, as often happens, and then she enters the market looking for the good dad, basically. And because she isn't looking for good genes anymore since she has them, she's looking more for a sponsor. And this isn't a malicious, conscious master plan where she sits in a dark room plotting. It is an unconscious biological drive that she has actually very little control over. And for a woman from any type of cloth, getting the best genes and the best provisioning from two different males is actually an evolutionary jackpot. It is literally the ultimate win. And this actually leads us to the final and probably the most uncomfortable point. Men have a deep, visceral reaction to raising another man's kids, and a lot of you are shamed for saying it. But the feeling is there. And it turns out there is a fascinating scientific reason for this. Studies have actually shown that men can identify their own children in a crowd with greater speed and accuracy than mothers can. Think about that. A father can spot his biological child in a room full of kids wearing identical uniforms faster than the woman who gave birth to them. Why is that? Because for a man, the stakes are absolute. So if a woman raises the wrong kid, she still knows it's hers. But if a man raises the wrong kid, he has lost the genetic game entirely. And he has become a genetic dead end, literally. So when a man enters a relationship where he's providing for another man's genetic legacy, whether through marriage to a single mother or staying with a cheating wife, he is sacrificing his reproductive schedule to facilitate hers. He is trading his resources for a limited form of intimacy, while the good genes guy got the prime years and the genetic victory for free. So while society will tell you that stepping into that role makes you a savior, biology actually tells you you are servicing another man's investment. And here's the bottom line. This isn't about criticizing women or blaming them for their nature. It is simply deductive logic because for a species to survive, the female must filter for the best genes, but also the best security. And the conflict arises because rarely do those two things exist in the same man. You need to understand that these mating behaviors, so to speak, short term for genes, long term for comfort, are just simply hardwired. So when you see a woman's behavior change from her 20s to her 30s, or you see the nice guy lose his shot, you are just watching this mechanism in real time. So don't be the guy who blindly follows social practices that were basically invented to exploit your own labor. You should understand the game and recognize where you fit in that dynamic and make your choices with your eyes wide open. So, if you found value in this breakdown, make sure you let me know your thoughts below. If you have any experiences which point in this direction, and as always, if you want to work directly with me, navigate your relationships, you can click the first link below and book a call with me. Until then, thank you for your time, and I'll see you later. Cheers.